Reports out of Brussels say EU ambassadors have given provisional backing to the EU-Mercosur trade agreement. Here in France, farmers have been protesting in the capital with their tractors. They say that their livelihoods would be threatened by unfair competition from South America. The French president has said he will vote no against this agreement. Ireland, Poland also expected to vote no, and still the agreement is expected to pass. Let's speak to Alberto Rizzi, a policy fellow at the European Council on Foreign Relations. Hello to you, Alberto. Thank you for joining the program. Italy was seen as key to how today's vote would unfold, and earlier this week, the country flipped its position for Mercosur. Why did it make that change?
Well, Italy has been playing with the different divisions on the Mercosur deal for a while, and after receiving what the government considers acceptable assurances from the European Commission in terms not just of the safeguard measures of the deal, but also in terms of the next European multi-annual financial framework and the availability of more flexibility in some common agricultural policy funding, decided that it had more to gain from siding in favor of the deal rather than opposing it. And overall, the deal is massively favorable to Italy because it has a particularly complementary trade with Mercosur countries. So it has a lot to gain and very little to lose.
Yeah, in a very different perspective from here in France. Farmers protesting yesterday, again today. How would you explain this deal to the French farmers that say their livelihoods are going to be undercut by these cheaper products from South America, which face less strict regulation? Should they be worried, or would they also stand to benefit from this?
I think it depends on the farmers we're talking about. If you're a competitive farmer that produce something that has an important geographical indication or quality, and you're looking for external export market, you're going to benefit significantly from the agreement. You would have more markets available where your denominations would be protective. On the other hand, if you're a farmer that only produce normal standard goods for the European market, you're already not very competitive. You're facing already difficulties from other European producers, then you might lose out from this agreement, but it's only a tiny part of the farming community in Europe, and especially one that was not very competitive even before. It's very hard to imagine that the Mercosur deal, considering that the quantities the quotas that would be allowed with no tariffs are extremely small, could be the death blow to farmers. They would be struggling already, and it's very unlikely that the deal would be a matter of life and death. But it's probably easier to protest against this trade deal than against overall structural issues of agricultural competitiveness in France or in other European countries.
One of the common refrains we've heard from activists or protesters here is that this deal was 25 years in the making, that the text that binds it is 2.5 decades old, and that it's outdated, and that it should have been brought up to speed to consider environmental impact, to consider all these different ways that people live their lives today compared to how we did at the start of the century. Is that a fair criticism?
It's not really that fair in the sense that one could argue that you cannot debate a trade deal for 26 years. It's too much. You should have signed it long earlier to provide some certitude in the trade relationship. On the other hand, those 26 years also meant that there has been updated and different things were included at a later stage into the agreement. But most importantly, you cannot ask to change the deal after it had been achieved at the end of 2024. So if it took you 25 years, 26 years to negotiate it, and you cannot ask to change it. And in terms of environmental clauses, there have been several that have been included in the agreements. And also, it paves the way for a further harmonization in the future of regulations between the EU and Mercosur. And let me stress this, all final products from Mercosur country that enter the European Union would have to be perfectly compliant with European rules for finished products. So we're not really opening the door to uncontrolled and dangerous goods. Yes, there would probably be some cheaper competition coming in, but that's what happens when you sign a trade agreement, and Europe would be the cheaper and higher quality competition in basically all of Mercosur countries industrial goods. And that's something that probably isn't stressed enough on the European side.
And so for consumers here in Europe, how long till they would see perhaps a positive effect from this trade agreement?
It would take years overall, because the one thing that happens with most trade deals is that you tend to have very localized and precise negative effects, while you have widely distributed smaller positive effects. So it would be difficult to feel it immediately. Firms exporting to Mercosur countries, or firms that have been struggling after Donald Trump imposed tariffs on goods entering the US, would find the more immediate benefits from the Mercosur deal. In terms of consumers, it would probably be something perceptible at the end of the decades, or 2 or 3 years down the road.
All right, Alberto. Thank you very much. Alberto Rizzi joining us there. Thank you.
Thank you.